All right, today we're cracking open a case that honestly reads more like science fiction than a legal document. What we have here is a collection of official filings. We're talking criminal complaints to military prosecutors, urgent appeals to the UN, and even reports to Interpol. And together they lay out an alleged crime so advanced it really makes you question everything you know about privacy, autonomy, and control. So let's dive in and start our forensic examination. Just imagine for a second if this was your reality. This single sentence is the opening line from one of the main criminal complaints we're looking at. It is an absolutely chilling window into a story of alleged technological torture, a fight for the most basic human right there is, control over your own mind. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what these official filings are claiming is going on. So what is the core accusation here? Well, it's not some simple, straightforward crime. The documents describe a kind of continuous, systematic torture, and it's one that's allegedly powered by a piece of highly advanced and apparently classified technology. Let's get into what this tech is supposedly all about. At the very heart of this entire case is one piece of technology, a brain-computer interface, or BCI. Now, the legal filings allege that a classified military-grade version of this device was secretly implanted into the subject's brain. And the alleged purpose of this? Well, it was to give a whole network of operators the ability to remotely monitor his senses, read his thoughts, and even control his physical actions. What's really striking here is just how specific these allegations are. The documents don't just say abuse. They list out a whole regimen of torture, citing Article 282 of the Romanian Penal Code. We're talking about things like voice-to-skull technology, also known as V2K, basically beaming sounds directly into your head, bypassing your ears completely. The filings also claim the remote creation of physical pain, and maybe most disturbing of all, direct commands to commit suicide, which are claimed to have resulted in multiple actual attempts. Okay, so all of this just begs the question, right? How on earth could something like this even start? The legal documents all point back to a single foundational crime that allegedly put this entire nightmare into motion. According to these international legal filings, the story kicks off in May 2022, over in the United Kingdom. The documents allege a terrifying three-step sequence. First, an illegal entry into the subject's home, then sedation with an injection, and finally, the surgical implantation of this BCI device, all of it done without his knowledge, without his consent. This one act, the documents argue, is the original crime that every other alleged abuse is built on. So if you've got this secret device in your head, how do the perpetrators explain away the constant interaction, the voices, the control? Well, the documents describe a really elaborate cover story, basically a psychological operation that was designed from the ground up to hide the real nature of what was happening. So this cover story, according to the filings, was an interactive show radio. But here is the truly twisted part, the part that dials up the psychological cruelty. The operators, the voices he was hearing, they weren't strangers. The documents claim they were mostly former school colleagues and acquaintances. A detail that, it's argued, was specifically chosen to cause the most emotional distress and humiliation possible. Now, with claims this big, you're going to need some serious proof, right? The key piece of physical evidence that's cited in all these legal filings is a medical scan of the subject's head. But as you're about to see, how you interpret that scan is a huge point of conflict. And this is where we hit a major roadblock. On one hand, the subject claims these CT scans, which have been submitted as evidence, clearly show a metallic artificial implant. But on the other hand, the documents also mention that a neurologist who looked at the exact same scans just dismissed the object as a natural part of the bone. This fundamental disagreement is cited as a key reason for escalating the whole case to military and international authorities, hoping to get some kind of specialized forensic analysis. So you might be thinking, okay, if the CT scan is debatable, why not just get a more detailed MRI? Well, the legal filings actually address that head-on. The subject's fear, as it's stated in the documents, is that the incredibly powerful magnets in an MRI machine could grab onto a metallic implant and cause, catastrophic, maybe even bullet-like damage inside his brain. So it's not framed as a refusal to get more evidence, but as a critical medical precaution. Now, the people behind this allegedly tried to frame the whole thing as a consensual show, but the legal documents lay out a very careful argument to show that any kind of consent was invalid by law from the absolute beginning. Let's break down that argument. Okay, so the legal argument here is all about the timeline. First, the filings claim the BCI implant was already active and the subject was already hearing voices before he was ever shown any kind of online form for this so-called show. And the key piece of evidence they point to is a note he supposedly wrote right on that form. This is already happening to me. So, based on that sequence of events, the documents conclude that any agreement he gave was based on deception, and it happened after the initial crime was already committed, which would make it legally null and void. So we're not just talking about some shadowy, faceless group here. No, the legal complaints actually name names. They identify a whole network of people who are allegedly the active operators of this show radio, the ones behind the keyboard, so to speak. Here are just a handful of the individuals who are specifically named in the criminal complaints filed with military prosecutors. And the documents don't just list their names, they get into specific accusations for each one. For instance, Roxana Zirbo is accused of directly causing pain and even trying to bribe the subject to keep him quiet. Andrei Bildian is accused of some truly extreme psychological torture. And again, the filings really stress that a lot of these alleged operators are people he knew from school. And you have to understand the sheer amount of time we're talking about here. According to the most recent filings, this alleged torture has been going on continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for over 37 months straight. It's just staggering. So let's recap. The whole case, as presented in these legal documents, really comes down to a single, hidden, non-consensual act. And that brings us to the final, huge question that the filings just start to touch on. If the whole show was just a cover story, a deception, then what was the real purpose? Was this an illegal medical experiment, some kind of sophisticated psychological warfare? In our next explainer, we are going to dive much deeper into the documents that lay out the alleged motive, the structure, and the ultimate goal of this entire operation.